first, but I'm sick. Yo, that sucks. That sucks, dude. Or does it? At least you don't have to go to school, I'm sure, right? Because you can't get everyone else sick. And it's not your fault that you're sick, so it's not like you're going to be grounded while you're stuck at home. It's not like, you'll be grounded. So there, I guess, is some pluses. It just doesn't physically feel good, obviously. Just gotta try to see those pluses. My throat, but really cold outside, though. Dang. I don't remember your age, and this might sound like a stupid question, but do you smoke? Because that could be a reason as to why your throat don't feel good. No? Okay. I mean, it's a reasonable question. Have basketball? Uh, how does that end up in your throat hurting, though? People get me sick. Someone you were playing basketball with, probably. I'm trying to keep track of how many times that I work out throughout this year, because it's one of my resolutions. So far, I feel like I'm doing pretty good. Bro, my mic's twisted. There we go. That was annoying. It's good to have some sort of resolutions. You just start with one or two small things, something that you know you can achieve, and you just implement something new into your daily lifestyle, into your routine. The body is the temple. If you take good care of your body and your health and stuff, you have less chance of getting sick than somebody who is unhealthy and doesn't take care of their body. And it's more than just exercise. I've been watching what I eat, trying to eat more wise, if that makes sense. Laying off the junk. What is this? Huh. I go rest. Alright. You go get your rest, broski. I really hope you start feeling better soon. Try to drink some tea. Some herbal tea. I mean, almost all tea is herbal. But tea is good when you're sick. Might not make you feel like 100% better, but it might just make you feel 1% better. And when you're sick, 1% makes you feel I mean, 1% could make a difference. I don't recommend this, but when I'm sick, I'll do both like natural remedies and medical remedies, if that makes sense. Like I'll take cold medicine, but then I'll also like, you know, have like a tea, drink or eat chicken noodle soup, you know, just like the classic traditional remedies, whether or not there's enough um, facts to back whether or not those things work. Uh, I don't know about that, but that's why I tend to try to go for both. Because I don't want to just like try drinking or eating chicken noodle soup and thinking that's going to make me feel a billion% better. Because at the end of the day, I know it won't. When I'm sick, I'll like have those little cough lozenge or whatever, those halls is what they call them up here. I don't know what brand they would call them elsewhere. Those little holes for like my throat, and if I have a cough, um, Vicks, the Vicks rub, that rub that smells like super strong of menthol. Rub a little bit of that on your chest or whatever. Clears up the sinuses and makes you breathe better. I forget the exact name of it, but we used to have this like Chinese cough syrup, which was like a herbal cough syrup, and that stuff done the job. It done the job. It was like so good when it came to trying to make me feel better. I don't know why we don't have that in the house no more. It just became less popular? I don't know. It was like Nim Nom Jim Chow Pei Pa Cow or something. If you type in Chinese cough syrup, it sounds stereotypical, but if you type that into Google, I'm sure it's going to be like the first thing pops up. This is the first thing that pops up. Nin Jaom Pei Pao Ka Kao. I don't know how to pronounce that, but that's my English pronunciation. Hey, I was pretty right the first time. I was pretty close that first time. Nin Jiom Bei Bao Gao. If you try to say it with an accent, it actually sounds like it could be right like that. That is funny. I think I had the perfect pronunciation that time. Or very close, like 79, 78% of the pronunciation. That second time around. It's because you can't try saying like a Chinese word in an English accent. You have to say that. You have to say a Chinese word in a Chinese accent. I saw a clip where this dude was saying that if you go to I think Japan it was, or maybe I forget exactly where, but somewhere in Asia, if you go there, they don't feel like they don't feel you're being rude to their culture when you try to speak in their accent, because it actually, if anything, just makes it more understandable for them to be able to understand what you're saying, which makes sense in my opinion, because I've heard people of other languages speak English in their accent, and it's hard for me to understand it. But if they were to speak more like in my accent, I wouldn't even feel that'd be like rude or anything. I'd just be able to understand them better. It's a good thing I put yapping in the title because I'm definitely doing that right now. I want to look up what's inside these. Okay, so a blend of herbs, honey, and menthol. The ingredients include fritilla, fritillary bulb, loquat leaf, four-leaf ladybell root, Indian bread, pomelo peel, Chinese bellflower root, Panilla rhizome, Chandra seed. There's so many like different things that I just don't even. Fresh ginger. Okay, that's something I can understand. Bitter apricot kernel. Apricots have kernels? Like a corn? Thin leaf milkwort root. What the frick is that? Colt's foot flower? Licorice root. No wonder it done the job so well. Do not take if you're pregnant or breastfeeding. Consult a doctor if you have a fever over 38 degrees Celsius. Oh my god, that's a huge amount. 38 degrees. Sheesh. Consult a doctor if symptoms persist for more than a week. Consult a doctor if you're taking other medications. It's a traditional herbal cough syrup. How did that end up into like my Canadian childhood? It's like it being like a traditional Chinese cough syrup. Like that was like a household. I wouldn't say staple because that's something that you like have all the time, but like it was something we had in the household all the time for when we got sick. It was like traditional for us as well. Am I part Chinese? Oh my god. You couldn't comment? Ah. Yo, what's up, Ali? What's good, young boy? What's good, bruvs? I've been yapping for 14 minutes? Oh my god. I've been yapping for 14 minutes. How's nobody just gonna stop me? Y'all just gonna let me yap and yap and yap? So how's everyone doing? I like to ask how you guys are doing because I don't know if... I feel like people don't get checked up on enough nowadays, and I like to check up on you guys, you know? Will you create your own clan? I mean, it's something I've been thinking about, not going to lie. I've been thinking about it. I just don't know if I would have the time to dedicate, or I wouldn't necessarily want to phrase it like that. I don't know if I would have the want to dedicate my time towards a clan. If I could find like someone to just like I create it, they manage it for me, boom bada bing, that would be great. but to try to find someone to trust to actually run and manage something like that under my image would be tough. It's just something I need to eventually like figure out how to reallocate my time to where I have more. Oh, wait, you said clan with a K. Oh, the Discord clan is clan. I don't know if I care too much about none of that stuff. I got my little Discord server with little community and stuff, and I'm happy with what I got. And I'm not the most technically inclined person, so I don't know nothing about no coding. I don't know nothing about any of that kind of stuff. I had a hard time just being able to create my Discord server. I I don't really like to Google things that chat tells me to Google, because usually when I get told to Google something, it's usually not something good. I'm not saying that that's what's going to happen in this case, it's just not worth the risk though. Is it just me, or is Nightbot annoying? It is? Well, darn. Canadian money has reached like a historic low in decades. That is why I would suggest to anybody, invest a little bit of money to buy Canadian currency, just a little bit of it, and then just hold on to it for like 10 years, maybe not even that long, and watch if the Canadian currency grows again, then that money's going to be worth something. And if the Canadian economy completely crashes and we start using the state's dollar, well, that piece of currency that's going to be no longer in circulation, that's going to be worth money in the future anyway. So no matter what, it's a good investment. You know, your $100 could turn into like 160 or something, or it could turn into like, 1,000 or something, depending on if, because we all know how like currencies work. Oh damn, lira. Lira, bro. I could buy an entire Popeyes menu with that. See, that's something I find crazy to me, okay? So listen, Linda. One they always like have these commercials and ads running in Canada and in the States and stuff. They always say for like $1 a month or for $2 a month, you could feed this young individual here or this family right here for an entire month or something like that. It's like, excuse me? Why can't I feed myself for that little? You know what I'm saying? Like, I love the idea of charity and donations and giving to the hungry and stuff like that, but why is it cheaper for them? That's just mind-boggling for me. Or maybe it's like something different to where it's like for every dollar you donate, they're donating a certain amount as well to go alongside that, because they're getting like tax write-offs or government checks or assistance, or like I don't know exactly how that works. No, we get other ads too. It's just like I feel like that's something controversial in my opinion. Like you're saying $10 could get you the entire Popeyes menu, where if you were to go to somewhere here with $10 and go to like a Popeyes here, you'd only be able to get one thing off the menu for $10. It's the same money, just once you convert it to a different kind of currency, then it becomes more valuable. It confuses me. It confuses me how cheap I can see like certain things in like videos and stuff. Like I'll watch these videos where they go into like these um, street vendors and stuff like that. They can get like the cheapest meals on the planet. Why does Canada not have that? Why does America not have that? Why do we all have to pay like ridiculous prices just to fill a grocery cart? Ketchup flavored goldfish crackers are a thing? That doesn't sound strange to me. We have ketchup flavored chips here, and I'm pretty sure we also have ketchup flavored goldfish as well. I'm pretty sure I've even tried like extreme pizza flavored goldfish, dill pickled flavored goldfish. I've tried like four cheese. There's a few different ones. Ketchup, I'm pretty sure is one of them. Canada's known for having ketchup chips. It's like our thing. And then the states, the people from the states down south, they're like, ketchup on chips? Ew. And then you ask them what they eat their french fries with, and they'll say ketchup. I think we're a colony of Canada. Oh, snap. I don't know if we've got colonies like that. Emphasis on I don't know. Because I don't. I know that places do have colonies across the globe. I don't know if Canada's one of those places where we have places that are out of Canada. I think people just like ketchup. If you're a smart person, you like ketchup. I don't think that's actually how that works. It's so stupid and funny because ketchup is, I think it's American, but yet it's the Americans that don't put it on everything. It's the world that puts it on everything. We also have lots of soda in the freezers of markets. Wouldn't they explode? If you put a soda in the freezer, it'd explode. Because the fizzy bubbly go boom. The fizzy bubbly go boom. They don't explode? Interesting. See, before we had refrigeration here in Canada, what we would do is we would have what's known as a cold cellar, basically, which is like usually in the basement of a house or along the side of the house or something like that. Would be like, because you know, the further underground you go, usually the cooler it feels. That's why a basement usually feels more cool than the upper level. Well, if you have a very low basement, then it's going to stay cold a lot more. Especially up here in Canada. But we would also go as far as putting like ice blocks into these. Can you speak Quebec French? I can, but I don't like to do it. I have a very I've got a very English accent, so when I speak French, I don't sound French. I just sound like someone who's trying to speak French. So then that kind of just turned me off from learning as much French as I should have learned. I still know French and I could speak some French. I just never got over the like embarrassing factor of like trying to adapt a different accent. Because there's like some very fluent English and French speakers here to where once they start speaking English, that you're like, yeah, that's a perfect English accent. Dude speaking fluent English. But then they just flip a switch out of nowhere and they're just French all of a sudden. And they sound super French and it's just pure Frenchness, you know? You can find the same thing in the States with people who speak fluent American English, and then all of a sudden they'll speak Spanish out of nowhere and be super fluent in Spanish. Well, I was surrounded by all these fluent speakers, and being one of these ones that couldn't like hit that fluent accent, it just, I don't know, it's embarrassing. They make you read in front of the class and stuff, and everyone, you hear the giggles and stuff in the classroom. But yeah, I mean, long story short, I know French, I speak, I can, I'm not going to. I'll give you one French word. Poutine. English people will call it poutine or poutine, but it's poutine. It's just like it's slightly different. I think I messed it up. I see. I butcher French words because of my English accent, but it's alright. Flatter me or poutine. Yo, funny story. Funny story. I tried ChatGPT for the first time ever, and I wanted to ask one like controversial, really messed up question just to see like what it would be like. So I said, "Is Trump like Hitler in any way?" And then it just said suspicious activity was detected from this device, and it would not work for me after that point. I broke it on the first question. I broke it on the first question. It wasn't even that serious of a question. Like, I'm obviously taking the piss out of it. But yeah, that's funny. Personally, I don't trust AI. That's my take. Just think about what, like, a rich, evil supervillain in a sci-fi movie would do with the power of AI. Like, imagine a sci-fi movie where Elon Musk was the ruler of AI, had all the control over it. Like, in a hypothetical sci-fi scenario, hypothetically. That would be like some crazy overlord type ruling, crazy control over the people. Like, think about what AI can do or could do if used in the wrong hands, just currently, with the power that it's got right now. It's crazy. You could write a whole book about it and make a cool movie about this. Like, maybe that's not a bad idea. Make a movie about how AI could. But there's so many movies already like that. Like Matrix and Terminator and all that kind of stuff. I Am Robot. You're dodging my question about what you would think that a evil supervillain would do with AI. You're dodging my question. If you were like in a hypothetical scenario, if you were a evil supervillain, how would you use AI to control everyone? There's like a lot of controversy and debate over this actual topic in real life, um, to where they're trying to they want to put rules in place and guidelines in place to make sure that nobody actually uses AI for evil purposes, basically. Just to dumb it down, I'm like saying it like that. There's obviously more technical reasons towards it besides quote unquote evil purposes, but that's just dumbing it down. AI has the power to control and manipulate people's thought process. Because a strong enough AI will gather enough intelligence from the population to know exactly what everyone is going to be thinking, to where they'll answer your question before you even question. You can manipulate a certain narrative if you had the wrong intentions with AI as well. You can spread misinformation like nobody's business. You can control social media, you can control government, you can control a lot of things if AI fell into the wrong hands. That's why I'm personally not really for it. I'm kind of against it, but then again, if it's in the right hands, there's some great stuff right there. Imagine how perfectly automated the world could become. We could have robots doing everything for us. People will never have to work again. Everyone could feel rich. Think about it. Why would people have to do anything? We just have robots that are automated doing everything for us. You know, from planting the crops, harvesting the crops, to, butchering the animals, and, you know, to flipping our burgers, and, like, there'll be a robot for everything. People won't have to do anything besides consume. And that's what they want, really. They want everyone to just consume. Because how do you control a population the best? You train them only to consume. Because if you can't produce as a person and you only consume, you're dependent. You depend on the hand that feeds you. And those are the easiest people to control, if you really think about it. Why am I going into like some conspiracy weirdness? I just want to dismiss everything I've said this entire stream. Just disregard everything as just waffling. If you come to this channel for facts, you've come to the wrong place. Go look up some facts. Go study. I do not um, I do not want to try to spread misinformation, even if that's not my intent. I don't want to accidentally spread misinformation, and if I do, then I'd rather have people educate themselves on the topic, so then they would be able to know that I've misinformed them, rather than just going around being misinformed. So anything I do say, make sure to like just study it yourself and don't take my word for it. I'm not no scientist. Feel tempted to watch the news, but I want to avoid it today because it's just been so freaking like I don't even want to follow the news anymore. It's so petty. It's like we're supposed to do our part as the people to stay informed when it comes to news and politics and stuff like that, so then we can make informed decisions when it comes down to decision making time. But when everything you see is just so nasty out there on the news, the world's just so nasty, it really just turns people away. Or it gets people to engage, but in like not nicest fashions.
President of Research Co. Mario, thanks so much for your time today. You have new polling focusing on just that, shall we call it patriotic shopping. How are people responding to this push to buy Canadian?
Well, we were in field over the weekend on Sunday, and the level of support for the idea of buying Canadian is very high. I mean, we asked about how Canadians felt about buying U.S. goods at the start of the year. The number was negligible. Now we have more than 3 out of 5, 61%, who are essentially saying if there's a non-American alternative I can buy, that is what I want to purchase.
So we have this 30-day pause right now where tariffs could still be implemented in a month. Does it seem like people will continue to focus on buying Canadian products, even if these tariffs don't become a reality, or become a reality potentially in a month from now?
Well, that is the mystery of the Donald Trump presidency, of course. You know, something might change in the next 15 or 20 minutes, and then we're back into square one. Part of what this is going to do is it's going to make Canadians more mindful of their choices, whether or not these tariffs are ultimately implemented. I think what we see in a way is the ideology of Donald Trump was something that many Canadians didn't particularly enjoy. We saw that in November, December, and January. But now that we see the consequences of his actions, we're more likely to take this seriously.
This threat from the U.S., of course, still a very real concern, but could there be a blessing in disguise here and ultimately boost national pride and boost awareness of Canadian products?
I think there's a great opportunity for that. I mean, part of it is the discussions related to sending trade from one area to another. When we asked Canadians over the weekend, they said maybe this is the opportunity to do something more with Australia, with Japan, with Mexico, and with the European Union. So it might be their loss if this continues to go the way it has over the past couple of weeks.
So it appears there are other countries that Canadian...
At Trout River Industries, they're breathing a sigh of relief. For now, the tariffs are on pause for 30 days. Trout River builds live bottom trailers that are sold around the world. 40% of its business is to the U.S.
We had close to $1 million sitting in the yard, and we were talking about who's going to make the phone calls tomorrow to these customers and tell them that they got to pay 25% more after the contract's been signed, sealed, delivered, deposits, all of that. It was going to break a lot of relationships that we spent the last 20 years building.
The pause on the tariff threat came late Monday after Canadian officials agreed to additional measures to protect the border. Officials at Aspen Kemp, which designs and develops products for the marine and offshore industries, says Canada needs to tread lightly in its talks with the U.S.
There's some obvious personalities in there that I think caution should be caution, but a united front as far as Canada goes, I think, is really important. And it's really difficult to know what exactly the end game is for the U.S. So trying to figure that out, but not trying to escalate the situation, but being firm for sure. And so far, I think that's happened.
PEI's only beef plant ships around the world, but 35% of all Canadian beef is sold in the U.S.
We probably benefited from pressure that he was feeling from his own citizens on how bad this would be for them. And I think that's a big part of it, is that, he craves headlines, but he likes positive headlines, I think, more than negative headlines.
PEI's premier says the pause gives time to work on a plan to protect jobs, businesses, and industries on the island.
A reprieve is not total relief, so while we can rest for a second
Toronto
and maybe
on
catch our
time.
breath and enjoy a small victory for now, we remain equally as concerned as we were prior to that as to where this all stands and what the future looks like.
Canada's premiers are meeting again Wednesday and will be back in Washington next week. Premiers will meet with key members of the new administration, Congress, and business leaders. Trout River says it's now looking at getting its parts in Western Canada or Europe, just in case. Stewart says he doesn't believe this battle is over yet.
We can't wake up at the end of the month and say, oh, here we are again.
Well, good game.
We have to survive. There's 115 families here that we got to make sure that they're looked after.
So where does it all go from here? The trade war is off, at least for now. U.S. wine, beer, and spirits
The country's finance ministry announcing a 15% tariff on U.S. coal and liquefied natural gas, and an additional 10% on farm equipment and some vehicles. These measures take effect February 10th. This is in response to Trump's 10% duty on Chinese imports. The White House says President Trump plans to talk with Chinese President Xi Jinping in the next few days.
We are firmly opposed to this unwarranted increase, and we do believe that this is in violation of the WTO rules. So that's why China is filing a complaint at the WTO. And let me also emphasize that there is no winner in a trade war. And we do hope that the U.S. should look at its own problems, really find a solution that is beneficial, not only to itself and also to the whole world. And frankly speaking, I don't think that raising tariffs is beneficial to the U.S. itself.
所以我觉得最后的结果就是两边都受伤嘛，就是美国它加关税，然后我们的产品在海外的销路会变差一些，因为关税高了，价格高嘛，就不愿意买。然后对美国来说的话呢，它奉行这个单边主义，你对本国的一个国际的一个影响力是，我觉得是不好的，因为它也不光针对中国，它对中国以外的刚才说加拿大、墨西哥，它的国际关系也会变差。所以我想最好是能够有没有办法，就是两边走一个合作共赢的路线，这也是我们这边在提的。当然，美国那边愿不愿意，就得看特朗普总统的想法。
我看了一下，其实中国对美国也有那个价格，也有那个提升的关税嘛，然后加的都是一些原油啊一些东西，然后我觉得可能汽油这方面东西可能也要涨价。然后反正这个东西，我觉得短时间内大家都解决不了这个问题，因为美国要把他自己的外债这些东西都解决完。
President Trump's 10% tariffs on all Chinese goods went into effect at midnight, and today Beijing is hitting back. Tariffs now on U.S. crude oil, agricultural machinery, certain automobiles, pickup trucks, coal, liquefied gas. China also announced an antitrust investigation into Google. Beijing appears to be taking a different approach than Canada and Mexico, whose leaders were able to secure a 30-day pause on tariffs after offering some relatively modest concessions to President Trump. Last hour, the president reacted to China's retaliatory actions during an appearance in the Oval Office. Listen.
Mr. President, what's your reaction to China's retaliatory tariffs?
That's fine. That's fine. We're going to do very well against China and against everybody else.
Any update on when you would speak to President Xi, sir? Any update on when you would speak to President Xi?
No, we'll speak to him at the appropriate time. I'm in no rush.
Joining me now is CNBC correspondent Megan Casella. Megan, China hit back with those tariffs we saw today. What does this all mean for the consumer? That's the big question here.
It absolutely is, Aaron. And what it means right now is higher prices. About 14% of everything that the U.S. buys from abroad comes in from China, about $400 billion worth of goods every year. All of those goods now are going to see a 10% higher tariff or a tax paid on the way into the country. And any companies that are importing those goods can pass those costs right on to their consumers. I was just looking at one estimate that puts the annual cost at about $225 to a household from these tariffs alone. Not the biggest amount on its own, but very significant still, especially at a time when families are sensitive to higher prices. And the individual goods that are likely to be impacted here is a whole lot of consumer goods, a lot of clothing, a lot of appliances, a lot of electronics. Think about things like smartphones, your washing machine or your refrigerator, and then your clothing and your sneakers as well. All of those could start to see higher prices.
Well, is that leading to a wider concern that a tit-for-tat tariff with China could spiral into something worse, a larger trade war between the two largest economies in the world?
That's absolutely the concern, because it could get much more painful. And remember, President Trump told reporters just yesterday that these China tariffs, he's considering them an opening salvo, meaning that he could increase the tariff rates further, meaning higher costs still, if he doesn't get what he wants from China. Those comments that you just heard a few minutes ago, earlier today, when he was saying to reporters that he's not in a rush to speak with President Xi of China, that doesn't bode well for the idea or the hope there was earlier today that there could be a quick deal made here, the way we saw with Canada and and Mexico and that the tariffs could be lifted. Now we know that we're a little deeper into this. There's no call happening today, I can confirm, according to a person familiar with the planning, and we don't know yet when one will be scheduled. That means that there's more to go here, and things could get worse before they get better.
Well, you mentioned Canada and Mexico. The tariffs there were delayed really only a month, right? Could we be going down the same road again in March with them? How concerned are businesses about some of the uncertainty of what could happen in a month from now?
We certainly could be seeing this play out again a month from now. March 4th is the date when those tariffs were delayed until, and I was talking with the White House today about what exactly they need to see from Canada and Mexico before then, and they told me that they want to make sure that those two countries are following through on the promises that they made yesterday, not necessarily looking for further commitments, but cementing the ones that they agreed to yesterday. It's important, I think, to remember some of what we saw in the president's first term. At one point, in about 2019, we did see him threaten tariffs against Mexico, and then
Yo, what's up, Susie?
On another point, he was talking about steel and aluminum tariffs on allies. He delayed those a month, and then they ultimately went into effect. So it's very much wait and see here. And when you bring up the businesses, the cost of uncertainty is a cost on its own. The chaos that sort of we've seen over the past several weeks, and what businesses need above all else is a certain environment in order to make major investments. And companies have always liked coming to North America because they can split production facilities among the three countries and make things as affordable as they can be for consumers. The more of this sort of tit for tat of threats that we see, the less stable of an environment that is. We might not see that investment coming here anymore, and there's still a lot of questions about what else might happen next. Maybe we get through this one hurdle, but will we see it again a month or a year from now? We definitely could.
All right, Megan Casella from CNBC, really putting things into perspective for us. We appreciate it, Megan. Thanks.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.
With Eastside Mario's all you can eat, you mancha, mancha, mancha. Oh, Pop, they got more salad. Oh, Pop, they got more soup. Oh, Pop, they got more garlic home loaf. Mancha, mama, mancha. Hey, bada boo, bada bing.
This morning, the United States and China appear to be inching closer to a trade war after Beijing revealed it would be retaliating against Washington tariffs with their own on U.S. goods. This was within minutes of the U.S.'s 10% tariff on Chinese imports coming into effect at midnight.
Beijing announced that it would impose tariffs of 15% on U.S. coal and liquefied natural gas, also 10% on other U.S. imports like crude oil and agricultural machinery. Beijing says those tariffs would go into effect on February 10th. That's next Monday. Despite this looming trade war with China, America's tariffs on Canada and Mexico appear to be on hold for now. Following a phone call with Canada's Prime Minister, Mr. Trump said he would pause tariffs for 30 days, citing Canada's plans to ramp up border security. It's important to note those border plans by Canada had actually been announced back in December. Yesterday morning, the president put a similar tariff delay on Mexico after speaking with his Mexican counterpart. She also told him that her country would be beefing up security at the southern border.
They've agreed to put in 10,000 soldiers permanently, like forever, 10,000 soldiers at their side of the border and stop fentanyl and illegal aliens from coming into our country. And we're going to have a big negotiation with Mexico. I'll be involved too, and President Sheinbaum will be involved to see whether or not we can work something out on the tariffs.
A lot to cover. Joining us now, NBC News White House correspondent Aaron Gilchrist and NBC News international correspondent Janice Mackey-Frayer, who is in Beijing. Good morning to both of you. So, Janice, let's start with you. Walk us through these retaliatory tariffs China has announced. Which U.S. industries is China targeting?
Dang.
Well, as President Trump stands down on Canada and Mexico, it seems to be heating up with China. Rapid-fire retaliation today from Beijing on multiple fronts. First, China is imposing additional tariffs of 10 to 15% on a range of U.S. imports, including coal, liquefied natural gas, crude oil, and farm machinery. It's also targeting some car imports, namely pickup trucks, and announced additional export controls on more than 24 critical metals. This is effective immediately. The tariffs, though, take effect on February 10th. The measures aren't seen as making a huge dent in the U.S. economy. Economists say it's more symbolic. The measures affect roughly 30% of U.S. exports to China, but they do seem designed to send a message from China that it could get a lot worse, in particular for red states. It's thought that China's leader, Xi Jinping, and President Trump were looking for a reset in relations. Xi sent his vice president to attend the inauguration. And that potential is still seen as being there, but on tariffs, Xi and the officials around him would not want to be seen as caving to President Trump, the U.S., or the West. So China was expected to hit back. Joe and Savannah?
Yeah, so Aaron, let's bring you in here and pick up right there. We understand President Trump is expected to speak with China's President Xi over the next few days. Were these retaliatory measures expected by the White House, and does it mean that we then see the Trump administration hit back again?
I think yes and yes. We knew over the weekend that the Chinese indicated that they would take steps to push back when these, if and when these tariffs from the U.S. went into effect, that they would challenge the tariffs in the World Trade Organization in sort of a court setting, and that they would take these steps that we now know they have taken. At the same time, we heard from President Trump yesterday that he intends to talk to the Chinese president, so that could be a sign that there might be a deal to be made here, as we saw with China, with Mexico and with Canada. At the same time, we know that the original executive order that was signed that put these tariffs on China did include a retaliation clause. And so it's effectively it said that if China took action, then the U.S. could take additional actions. The sound you played from President Trump indicated as much as well. And we also heard Secretary of State Marco Rubio say on television last night that he felt like if China continued to cheat and steal, the words he used, then that there would be additional actions taken by the U.S. I think it's worth pointing out that sort of murkies the water here, because that seems to indicate something economic. At the same time, we know that these tariffs from the U.S. were originally put in place, at least according to the executive order, because the U.S. administration wanted to stop the flow of fentanyl and precursor drugs that come from China.
So, Janice, you've got the tariffs, but on top of that, China also announced it's going to open an investigation into Google, while adding certain U.S. companies to what it calls its unreliable entity list. So what is that? What does this all mean?
Well, it's an antitrust probe into Google, which is not the first for the company. It doesn't do a lot of business here because the search engine is obviously blocked, but it is disruptive for Chinese companies, and the government appears to be wanting to make a point. As well, two companies, PVH Group, which owns clothing brands like Calvin Klein and Tommy Hilfiger, and Illumina, it's a gene sequencing startup. They're both being added to China's unreliable entity list here, meaning they're effectively blacklisted from doing business. So this reaction, again, coming from China on multiple fronts. The uncertainty now is whether this is all the preamble for negotiating tactics between these two huge economies, or whether it's the beginning of a deeper trade confrontation. President Trump has said that he plans to speak with President Xi. It isn't clear when or if that call is happening. But with both sides now looking for leverage in this, the signs seem to point to a bumpy road ahead. Joe and Savannah?
Aaron, we mentioned tariffs are on hold for Canada and Mexico. What happens next there?
Yeah, 1 month delay on the tariffs for Canada and Mexico after each of those countries indicated they would push back if the tariffs were applied to them. At the same time, these leader phone calls happened just yesterday, where President Trump spoke with the Mexican president and the Canadian prime minister and decided that some concessions would be made, that the Mexicans would send 10,000 troops to their northern border to deal with the flow of undocumented migrants and the flow of drugs as well. The Mexicans said the U.S. Had agreed to start working on trying to prevent high-powered weapons from crossing into Mexico. The Canadians, for their part, saying that they would spend upwards of $1 billion on border security via additional helicopters and personnel, as well as some technology being used there. They would create a position of a fentanyl czar in the Canadian government. Those are all things that seem to be enough to create this pause, although the White House is saying that they'll be evaluating this along the way. They'll have Secretary of State Rubio, as well as several other secretaries, continuing negotiations with both Canada and Mexico. Savannah, Joe?
We'll see if we're right back here a month from now. Aaron, Janice, thank you both.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app, or follow us on social media.
Selling a charger for your EV? Smart choice. For getting its permit? Not so smart. Every EV charger requires an electrical permit. Learn more at esasafe.com/EV.
The world is on the brink of war. Ready, Captain America. On my mark. You want me? Come and get me! Captain America, brave new world.
Dang.
Get tickets now.
On this road in El Paso, Texas, stretching as far as the eye can see,
Let's go.
thousands of trucks make their way back to Mexico after dropping billions of dollars worth of goods bound for U.S. consumers.
This is a scene that you see every day. Millions of dollars of product are coming in from Mexico into the United States.
For the first time in more than 2 decades, Mexico overtook China as the largest importer of goods to the U.S. Mexican goods imported to the U.S. totaled $475 billion in 2023, about $20 billion higher than the previous year. During that same period, Chinese goods imported to the U.S. came to $427 billion, $110 billion less than the year prior, and imports from Mexico are still climbing. In the first 8 months of this year, U.S. imports from Mexico reached $334 billion, 5.8% higher than the same period in 2023. Fueling materials and operations to Mexico. Jordan Dewart is the president of cross-border logistics company Redwood Mexico. In addition to this 100,000 square foot warehouse in El Paso, the company also has about 200 employees in Mexico. How has the landscape changed since the start of the Trump trade war when it comes to Chinese manufacturing?
Well, it's no secret there was a lot of pressure on Chinese companies after those trade wars. And I think we saw immediately an opportunity for Chinese companies to move to Mexico to kind of catch this nearshoring wave.
Ocean container data tracked by freight analytics firm Zenata backs that up.
We have seen 18 months in a row now with ever-increasing, basically all-time high monthly imports from China to Mexico.
Container traffic from China to Mexico has surged in recent years. From January to August 2024, China to Mexico container trade was up by 22% from the year prior. That's on top of container trade along the same route in 2023, up 33% from 2022. At the same time, China's container trade to the U.S. has slowed down.
We see an ever-growing trend into Mexico. I think that's pretty clear to me that something is going on here. Someone is preparing for something, and it's not all going into Mexico consumers.
VesselBot, which also tracks container flows, shows the 3-month period from April to June recorded the highest volumes of Mexico exports to the U.S. this year. The North American Free Trade Agreement, implemented in 1994, eliminated most tariffs between the three countries. The United States-Mexico-Canada Agreement, or USMCA, which replaced NAFTA, went into effect 4 years ago. The agreement is up for renewal in 2026, and a focal point of those talks is expected to be trade with China.
Chinese companies, if they import directly into the United States, they are faced with tariffs. If they bring their goods into Mexico and those goods are improved upon or some value added to them, they then qualify for the USMCA.
In terms of what you have to do to have a product that's labeled Mexican as opposed to Chinese in origin, you have to substantially transform it, which means it has to become a different product. So if I get a whole set of wooden boards, I turn that into a desk, I have substantially transformed that product. It has to change customs categories.
Changing a product's economic nationality or origin of goods means it can swap a Made in China label to a Made in Mexico one. An estimated $3.7 billion of Chinese foreign direct investments was made in Mexico in 2023, significantly higher than the previous decades. The Hapusan Industrial Park, 25 miles north of Monterrey, Mexico, is one example of that investment and is now home to at least 30 Chinese firms. In the past 3 years, 9 Chinese car companies, including BYD and Chery, have set up operations in Mexico. What are you moving within Mexico? Is it more components to manufacturing plants?
I think Chinese companies, when they established themselves in Mexico, they were bringing finished goods in. Now they've moved on to raw materials, component parts.
Backdoor has a connotation that they're doing something wrong. Just because you see a Mexican manufacturer using Chinese inputs does not mean that they're violating any rules of origin.
Simon Cohen is the founder and CEO of Henco, a logistics company that got its start in Monterrey, Mexico in 1998.
The facility that we have behind us, it's one of the 6 facilities that we have in Mexico City. What we do here is we receive raw materials and finished goods from abroad. We tag them, we label them, we pack them, we repack them, and we deliver to the distribution centers or final consumer.
The company has about 1,000 employees, and in addition to its facilities in Mexico City, it has 2 others in Monterrey and another 2 coming online later this year. Roughly 20 to 30% of the goods here are shipped to the U.S., according to Cohen.
The north part of Mexico is getting invaded with foreign investment, and people are coming from all over the world, from Asia, from Europe, from South America, even from Africa, and they are trying to build plants and manufacturing facilities to enter the United States market.
Not only are the Chinese setting up shop in Mexico with manufacturing plants, so are the European companies. They are moving their products away from China, and they're setting up shop in Mexico.
Some of the top 10 companies importing into Mexico in 2024 include European companies like Pirelli Tires and SKF, a Swedish auto parts maker, as well as Tesla and General Motors. One key advantage? Labor is often cheaper in Mexico than China, but its proximity to the U.S. might be its biggest advantage. The U.S. and Mexico share a 2,000-mile border with 47 active land ports of entry. Roughly 6 million U.S. jobs depend on trade with Mexico. The U.S. is also Mexico's largest export market. Mexican manufacturing represents about 40% of the country's $1.3 trillion economy. The 2 countries also share a unique relationship when it comes to trade. During the cycle of production, materials and parts often cross the southwest border numerous times while U.S. and Mexican factories work together to produce a good. As a result, 40% of the value of U.S. imports from Mexico are made of content produced in the U.S. Cars built in North America are believed to cross U.S. borders, including the border with Canada, 8 times as they are being produced. That means, unlike imports from China, a large portion of the money U.S. consumers spend on Mexican imports goes back to U.S. companies and workers.
Going back 30, 40 years, Mexico manufactured T-shirts and tequila. Now we're seeing much more sophisticated products, from engines for airplanes, aerospace, automotive, electric vehicles.
Mexico produces 3.5 million vehicles annually. 76% of those are destined for the U.S. market. The top 10 commodities traded between Mexico and the U.S. in June 2024 were vehicles, computers, and electrical machinery. But there are roadblocks ahead. Tesla announced in 2023 it was investing about $5 billion in a new factory in the northern Mexican city of Monterrey. However, that plan was put on hold after former
Dang, we
President
kicked him
Donald
butt.
Trump threatened to impose a 100% tariff on vehicles made in Mexico. Other headwinds facing companies investing in Mexico include security, worker availability, water scarcity, and Mexico's economic policies.
What is the biggest threat to the nearshoring boom? Politics, tariffs.
If tariffs are placed on Chinese goods, that will absolutely thwart the plan of these Chinese companies to backdoor their way into the U.S. through the USMCA agreement. It will have a huge impact on those companies specifically.
Juarez, one of Mexico's largest cities with about 1.6 million residents, is home to roughly 300 maquiladoras, or factories that take raw material and assemble them into finished products for foreign companies. To show you just how close we are to Mexico, right behind me is downtown El Paso. And a few miles away, 2 highways over, is Juarez, Mexico. And that's where the manufacturing facilities are located. For most trucks leaving Juarez, their first stop, Customs and Border Protection officers on the El Paso side of the border.
La calle Rojas. En cabina no llevas nada para declarar. Todo en orden ahí, no llevas acompañantes, nada ilegal. Okay, muy bien.
Oh, I just got into the game. How did we win? What?
What we have officers
I
doing
just
on
got
our
in.
primary lane is checking all the trucks as they're walking
Yeah, that's
by
a win,
them
I guess.
to see if there's any anomalies, any changes made to that truck. Has an air tank been tampered, modified? I mean, the rear doors of the trailer been opened without breaking the seal?
On an average weekday, 2,430 trucks pass through this
10 more
border.
wins.
Most truck drivers make the trip 2 to 3 times a day. In addition to narcotics, human trafficking, and terrorism, officers of the Anti-Terrorism Contraband Enforcement Team and their colleagues are looking at the products being transported and their country of origin.
We're looking where the product was made, where the final point of manufacture was, and that's what will determine country of origin. For these engines that we have behind us, not every single piece of the engine may have been manufactured in Mexico, but that's where the final assembly and it was put together was in Mexico.
At Capital Group, our funds are meticulously crafted to endure, including our new suite of active ETFs. This hands-on approach can make a difference where it matters, the core of a portfolio.
definition of Mexican cartels as terrorist
Yo, what's up,
To
Cameron?
get some more reaction to what comes next, Danielle Smith is Alberta's Premier. Hi, Premier Smith. Good to have you back on the show. Thank you very much for making the time.
Hi, Bashi.
In your weekend op-ed, Premier, you stated calm, logical discussion is far more effective than tough guy rhetoric when dealing with a misguided ally. Do you give the federal government any credit for this, 30-day pause? Was standing up to Donald Trump essentially necessary to make some progress?
I think that the arrangement that they came to yesterday, having the fentanyl czar and a cross-border collaboration, declaring Mexican cartels terrorist groups, and committing a number, 10,000 people who would be dedicated to this issue, I think that all satisfied the Americans' concern that we were going to take the fentanyl issue seriously. I think that's what led to a 30-day reprieve. Now it's going to be a matter of making sure that we show some progress on that in order to make sure that it doesn't come back.
Is it your impression then,
Bro, you're the tank. Get in there. You're being healed non-stop.
And I ask because
I've got you.
In one sense, that's what the executive order says. That's what all the communication yesterday said. But in another sense, just hours before the reprieve was announced, the president is going on and on and on about annexing Canada.
On and on and on.
I think that there's two conversations we're having with the U.S. administration. One conversation is the tariffs related to fentanyl.
I got you,
The
fam.
conversation is all of the irritation
You're welcome.
the administration has with the
Don't forget to endorse me as your favorite player.
I don't think we should intermingle those two.
MVP, yo.
Address the fentanyl issue. to
Tank, you gotta get in it.
tariffs.
Don't be scared. Don't be scared. I got you. I'm holding you.
An election, so
You're
we have a
being
government
healed.
who can spend 4 years renegotiating the CUSMA. I think if we try to intermingle those
I
two,
got you.
then we're not going to satisfy the concerns around fentanyl. So I'd like to stay focused on fentanyl, make some progress in the next 30 days.
You're taking a lot of damage, dang.
Move on to the next stage when we've got a new elected government at the federal level.
Is it us as Canadians, though, who are intermixing them, or is it the president himself? Because I would note, for example, his public statement last night on the reprieve concluded with essentially him saying, let's see if we can reach an economic, agreement by the end of this, while our statement focused very much on the border. And again, he's the one talking over and over again about the utility of
Oh, I
Canada
tried to get
becoming
for the
a secure
revive.
state.
I couldn't make it. They were
I think
protecting
it's
that.
bold. I think that we need to make progress.
It's alright. I'm gonna respawn right behind the tank. Kind of a good thing.
And we need to make progress on the things that are irritating to the Americans. The digital media tax, the banking industry, telecom, supply management. Those keep coming up, but those can only be resolved in the context of a broader renegotiation of the Canada-US-Mexico Free Trade Agreement, and that's not scheduled to be done until 2026. So we need an election. We can't have one prime minister start those discussions, the second prime minister carry it a few yards, and then a final prime minister negotiate it. We'd be much better off solving the issue around fentanyl so that it doesn't come back with the high punitive tariffs, and then getting an election so that we can get someone at the table to do the brass tacks negotiation for the next 4 years.
There will be an election, though, before those negotiations are supposed to start in earnest.
I sure hope so. I mean, as we all know, there is the ability for a new prime minister to try to negotiate a new deal with either the Bloc or the NDP to stay in until October. We also know our Constitution allows for an election that could be held as late as October 2026. I think that would be very damaging to the country. I just want to make sure everyone knows my view. Let's get a new leader in place in the Liberals, and let's get to an election right away. If they win,
Damn.
then we know who
The
is
hell
at
was
the table
that?
for the next 4 years. If it's somebody else, then let's get that resolved.
You spoke over the weekend and released a statement when the initial executive order was signed, basically intimating that your lobbying efforts in the United States had led to a better outcome for oil and gas because energy got a 10% tariff instead of the 25% tariff. What do you tell your province's farmers or manufacturers? Were you not advocating for them?
I was advocating for everyone. I think we were very successful in making the argument about energy resources. And let's remember that the definition of energy resources is very wide. It's oil, gas, electricity, critical minerals, uranium. So every single province benefited from the recognition that the Americans need that. I think we can make similar arguments on food. I think whether it's cattle or whether it's grains, I think that goes into
Oh my goodness gracious.
and it's the exact same argument. I think the same could be made for auto parts. The fact that auto parts go back and forth across the border 6 or 7 times
to create a finished product, that's a very strong argument to maintain those supply chains. So it's up to each premier to make those arguments, but I think the fact that we had a breakthrough on energy resources writ large, I think that shows that there is a pathway for us to demonstrate this.
If we don't get on that payload in 20 seconds, we lose.
So unique and so strong, and should stay that way.
Is it your intention, though,
I think
over
we
the
lose.
next month to
Good
advocate
game.
for all those
We
other
tried.
areas that you talked about? Because I think Canadians
10,
have an impression
9,
that
8, 7,
you know, some premiers
6,
are advocating for something,
5,
others are advocating
4.
for other things.
Oh yeah, we're
There's
dead. I'm
somewhat
dead.
of a federal voice unifying everything, but not really at all
Man.
the time. Like,
Oh well.
could you be blunt with Canadians? Is it your plan over the next